Welcome to today's historically inspired adventure. Now, making homemade bread may sound difficult, time-consuming, and even impossible with your busy life schedule. But here's the thing. It only takes really about 30 minutes of actual effort. The rest? Well, that's where the magic of yeast comes in. They do all the heavy lifting, while you get to either sit back and relax or do the rest of the things that are still on your list for the weekend to check off. Bread baking can seem time-consuming, but mostly it's waiting for nature to do its thing. Today, I'm going to share with you how simple it is to make a fresh loaf of sourdough with minimal effort and still get that crusty, delicious bread. So, why is baking bread a historically inspired adventure? Well, humans have been baking bread for over 14,000 years. We are literally carrying on a tradition that dates all the way back to the Neolithic era. That's when people first started settling in villages, domesticating plants and animals, and yes, baking bread. Today, we're not just baking a loaf of bread. We are connecting with generations upon generations of bakers that have come before us, making a little piece of history every time we need bread. So let's get into this simple, minimal effort process that leaves plenty of time for you to do other things while the yeast works its magic. Let's dive into the process and keep history alive one loaf at a time. So here's our fresh bucket, all rinsed out. Here's our starter. I'm going to start by adding a cup of warm water. I'm going to go ahead and mix this up. Oh, I should probably get where you can see me. Okay. All right, so we have a little over one cup, water, and whatever we had of the starter. So I'm going to start with 1 1/3 cups of flour, because we're going to let this do its thing overnight. That looks good. Okay, so this is what we have starting out again tonight. So below the line, we're going to let that rise until tomorrow morning, and then I'm going to feed it again. Today is the 31st, and it's 9 o'clock at night on 8/31. And we're going to revisit this tomorrow morning. Today's the next day, September 1st at 7:51 in the morning. Two cups of water. doing the second feed. Ooh, we're getting excited here. Get that all erased. Get 2 cups of flour. At a minimum 2 cups because I put in 2 cups of water. Remember, it's supposed to be whatever's in there. Whatever you start with counts. So usually, I think the King Arthur company says you take a half a cup of starter and a half a cup of water and add a full cup of flour. So both of your wet ingredients add up together. Okay, let's see. This is super wet. So we're going to definitely need more flour. So we're going to start with, I think a cup. I'm going to say half a cup, but I'm running behind on my schedule here for my morning exercise. Now, whip out the big guns. This is a bread whisk, I believe it's called. This one came from King Arthur flour, but I don't know that they are selling them right now. I know you can get them other places. The nice part about them is they kind of cut the dough as they're stirring it, or cut the starter or whatever you're stirring, but this isn't dough yet. Oh yeah, minimum a cup of flour. So we're gonna need some more. Let's do a half a cup. Keep the moisture in. 755. So what's that? I don't know, another 10 minutes maybe? It is now 3:45. Started at 7:55. It's 3:45. We need to turn this into bread. The first thing we're going to do is save some for next time. Let's see. Stir, stir, stir. Okay. And we are going to put all of this starter. At this point, it's just been flour and water into this bowl. Sorry, probably blocking the view. we're gonna add this to our bowl over here. We're gonna start with the flour, 2 cups of flour and a tablespoon of salt. Whisk this together. Let's get this going. In my mind, the nice thing about using a dough hook is that it mixes and kneads at the same time. Okay, and then add probably half a cup of flour at a time. When you add more flour, you want to start with it on a little slower until it starts incorporating the flour. Otherwise, it just kind of poofs it out at you. Okay, let's go with a 1/4 cup more flour. It's still pretty damp. Well, that feels pretty nice. So it's moist but not damp feeling. Kind of like not as firm as a new can of Play-Doh, but a new can of Play-Doh that's only been used once, maybe. Where it still has some moisture to it. So it is now 3:59. We're going to turn it out into a bowl and let it sit for an hour. So we added our first 2 cups of flour with the tablespoon of salt, and then we added an additional 3/4 of a cup of flour. I'm just going to put a little flour in the bowl and then take this out. It's still a little sticky. I don't want it to stick to the bowl too much. I'm going to set it in here and cover it with some plastic wrap, some cling film. Just to gently cover it and seal out the drying air. It's now 4 o'clock on the dot. I'll see you in an hour. So it's been an hour and 6 minutes. Here's our dough. It's a little bit tacky, which is where it should be. We're going to put some flour on the cutting board. So we've let it sit and it has done some raising. And I'm very pleased with how this is turning out. So remember, what we have here is flour and water and salt. I need to get another pan here. And just rubbing butter in a pan.
I'm going to cut it in half. If you are really picky, you can weigh it. And I'm not super picky, but I have been known to weigh each half so that my loaves turn out good. This week, I am making bread in loaf pans because I want it for sandwiches, and having it loaf shaped works out better for sandwiches. Okay, and tuck the end in. There we go. We came in the house at 6 minutes after the hour. It's now 11 minutes after the hour. So making bread takes a lot of time just because of the raising process. You don't actually spend a lot of time working the bread itself. So there's my two little breads, my breads to be. I'm going to get a clean towel and cover them up for their nap. And I'm just going to let them raise. If they're not ready to bake before I go to bed, then they can raise overnight. 12 minutes after 5, I'm leaving the bread to go ahead and do its thing. Okay. So the bread looks pretty good. It is 10:17. So we are going to bake it as is. Okay, there they are. That looks good. Okay, it took me 2 days to bake 2 beautiful loaves of sourdough bread. But when you think about it, only 30 minutes of that time was actual effort. 1 loaf is for our home and 1 is to gift. It's a perfect way to share homemade love with others. I realized while making this video that I've become one of those people, the ones that add ingredients without referring to a recipe. I guess that happens over time once you get the feel of it. But don't worry, if you need a recipe to get you started, I've got you covered. I've linked one that I started with down in the description below. It'll walk you through each step. For me, baking bread isn't just a link to a far distant past. It's also a direct link to 3 generations of women in my family, starting with my mother, who made the most delicious homemade bread. In fact, she was the reason why I was inspired to bake from scratch. And every time I bake, it feels like a tribute to her and all the generations of women that came before her. Fresh bread isn't just about the taste, although let's be honest, it is amazing. It's also free from all the chemicals that keep store-bought bread from going stale while sitting on your countertop for weeks. There's something truly special about homemade bread that you just can't buy at the grocery. Thank you so much for joining me today on this bread baking journey. I hope that you feel inspired to try it for yourself. And remember, it's not just about making bread. It's about creating something with your hands that connects you to history, family, and the simple, beautiful joys of life. See you next time.